Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming after the big game yesterday. First thing I learned is always get a hotel room that faces away from the street. I feel like a fish out of water here because I am not an activist, I am not an organizer. I am a scholar trying to make sense out of what's going on. So I will edit my talk on the fly. If you want the fuller version, go to Kindle, spend $9 or probably equal €1 now, and get the book. The book's 350 pages, MIT Press. It's not bad, and enjoy. So, okay, let's go. How do I go page down on this? The right button's not working. Mouse is not doing its thing.
Keyboard on the left.
Keyboard on the left, not the mouse on the right. Then the pestle with the vessel is with the chalice with the mouth. Oh, okay. Somebody remembers that. What my big message, if you got to have a takeaway, is that we're moving from a world based on groups to a world based on social networks. Social networks existed before Mark Zuckerberg was born. In fact, we can trace it back to Cain and Abel and the guy upstairs. But we've historically thought of the world in terms of groups. That is, of bounded little villages or neighborhoods. And it's still the normative idea. There's still a pastoralist ideal of that is what the good life is. And it's reflected in the EU also. And the common agricultural policy is not just politics, but a sense that it's really nice to have farms and villages. And this model, which doesn't exist anymore and may never really have existed, said all observed and dealt with all, we're all part of a group and we're in hierarchies. Here's from the anthropological movie Shrek on what a good life, happy villagers were. I assume you all saw Shrek. And unfortunately, industrialization came in and reorganized this. And the 19th century was basically about changes in society that were going on as a result of coming in, and the green is being polluted by various other situations. And the problem is that everybody panicked about this, that there were claims that things were falling apart because of technology. You can pick whatever upset you. Was it urbanization, bureaucratization, industrialization, capitalism or socialism, depending on your choice. And right now, it's the internet revolution going on. And that's happened in Europe. I haven't found any Asian examples, and certainly in North America, where Bob Putnam's book Bowling Alone, which many of you read about 15 years ago, said that formally organized groups were declining in the U.S., to Sherry Turkle's account of what her daughter is like, which he generalized to the world in a great example of sampling, which is that people were being isolated from each other by technology. And there are quotes all over the New York Times. I'm sorry, this is a bunch of American and Canadian examples that basically saying the internet is evil, it's messing you up. But I wonder, confess now, how many of you are checking something on the internet at this very time or using your mobile phones to check? Okay, the rest of you are either asleep or lying. So it is not true that the internet disconnects us. It allows us to multitask. We can connect with our friends in between seeing them. There's only about 4 people in this room that I know from before, but I'm sure I will meet some of the rest of you during the day, hopefully in a less alienating circumstance. And we can use the internet to fill in the gaps in communication from when we see each other in person. But there are big changes. If you look in the lower left of the networked individualism box, people are linked as individuals. They're not isolated, but they're not bound up in groups. They have to have agency. They have to go out and guess stuff, and they have to be somewhat less place-bound. How many people have read Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat? Okay, the book sold 1 million copies, and it had exactly the world title. Here's my sequel, which I will never write. The World is Lumpy. And what we have is we've done a lot of research in Toronto and in America, which shows that people connect more to the people they're physically close to. That's one of the reasons why you're here today, is to physically connect. So it's not an evenly flat situation, it's a lumpy situation. And in fact, when we studied Twitter, we found that most tweets were either local or followed airplane routes. And airplane routes are really desire lines. They fly to where people want to go. So it's not a randomly set up situation. So we've switched to social networks, and that means we're in multiple teams. Very few of us live in a single bureaucracy in a cubicle, especially folks in this room. These have soft boundaries, and we're moving from group to group. We found in one study of big corporation that they're in the average of 5 teams, which has its own problems of coordination. But we have the internet, and the internet does 2 things. One is, obviously, it's weakened the effects of distance, so you and I can talk with each other once we leave. But 2, it's personalized. Remember the old days? Some of you may remember the days when there were really things called home phones. And when the phone rang and my girlfriend called, my parents got on the other line to listen, or else they huddled around. That's why we got married. It was a lot easier. Now we all have personal cell phones. You can talk to your girlfriend or boyfriend or favorite animal. As we're Canada, we're very mellow. As much as you want to. It's a personal situation, and you can carry it with you. You all shut off your phones today. That's great, but obviously, if you want to check on the databases of what I'm saying, and there's a huge amount of it, you can use your phone to do it right now. You're available to other people. They're accessible to you. So this triple revolution of the turn to social networks, the internet, and mobile, is people function not in groups, but in networks. Families function much the same way. In the old days, we had the cliche situation of man going off to work, women staying at home and raising the kids. Now, either for economic need or liberation or both, we have both parents going off to work, and their kids have phones too. So there's a lot of calling back and forth during the day, a lot of coordination. So I've done an empirical study of one person, myself, to claim that the world's most popular email address is, "Honey, please bring home a liter of milk tonight." And the second most popular one is, "Let's go for a drink after work and talk about the horrible boss we have." So one of the things we know is, despite the media moral panic, the more the people use the internet, the bigger their social networks, the bigger their in-person contact. It is a total lie based on no evidence at all, but the New York Times and other influential media seem to keep believing it. I think they're panicked. That people disconnect when they're online. In fact, they connect even more. That's what the thing is. It's a connection mechanism. And it actually adds to face-to-face contact. We're off. I don't have, how much time do I have, Stephanie? 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So I'll skip all this stuff. But we're also connecting more and more. Many of you flew here. Many of you come from families with multi-family cars. Believe it or not, there are less wars in the world now, especially interstate, skipping U.S. invasions of various minor places like Iraq and Russian invasion of Crimea. And people can move around more freely, generally with minimal visa hassles, and we're getting much more interethnic and interracial marriage. People are connecting as individuals to each other in networks. They're not connecting in groups. I'll send you the slides. I know, this is crazy. So the last thing is, almost by definition, everybody in this room is a bit worker. You're playing with your fingers and moving stuff around on your computers. You're not making anything. You're not mining anything. You're not growing anything. The good news is, like me, I can watch the World Cup and edit a paper at the same time. You can be relatively footloose. How many people here work at home at least 2 days a week? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Some 4, some 5. It's not a great idea to do it all the time. You're going to get knifed in the back by somebody, but it's certainly something to do it. I haven't just been making this stuff up. I've been running 2 big projects, thanks to the Canadian government. One on how the internet fits into everybody's life. The other is how scholars work together over a distance, and scholars are a form of networked workers. So this is the book. Lee Rainey is my beloved co-author. He heads the Pew Internet and American Life Project. I've promised a copy of this book. I do not want to carry it on the plane to the person who asked the most provocative question, assuming we're allowed to have questions at the EU. It seems a pretty top-down situation, but come up to me afterwards if we can. Thank you very much.